Okay, so a few weeks ago I created a video on the topic of Samadhi, and it was quite a brief overview, and I just talked about 5 different states of Samadhi. And then I started getting questions coming in, asking for more details on Samadhi, so I thought I'd create this video and it could be a bit more of a deep dive into the subject. So the video I created a few weeks ago, as I mentioned, I talked about 5 different kinds of Samadhi. I'll try to put a link either on the screen to that video or in the description below. But just to summarize, I talked about Savikalpa Samadhi, Samadhi where discursive thought is still present, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Samadhi where discursive thought is not present. And when I talked about Sahaja Samadhi as being Samadhi which we enter into spontaneously or naturally, just at any time during the day. And then I talked about 2 other ways of categorizing Samadhi. Sabija Samadhi, Samadhi where karmic seeds still exist and can still produce fruit later. And then Nirbija Samadhi, Samadhi where there's no karmic seeds still present, nothing can manifest later on. So one of the questions that I was asked was, what is the relationship between Samadhi and the witness? Okay, so this is quite a subtle one. The witness is the ability to simply allow things to arise and pass away without colouring them. Okay? Colouring them means without trying to grab onto them, without becoming attached to them, without trying to push them away, without aversion, and without identifying with them, without thinking, this is me, this is mine. Okay, so if we're not doing any of those things, then the witness is present. Something simply arises, simply passes away. There's no involvement, there's no interaction, there's no colouring process of the mind. So how does this relate to Samadhi? So I talked before about how Samadhi is a state where pure awareness comes to the foreground and everything else goes to the background. Okay, so pure awareness becomes the dominant aspect of our being. But there are different layers to this. With everything else going to the background, thoughts can still be present, just in the background. Emotions can still arise. Memories can still arise. And then there are deeper forms of Samadhi where we lose awareness of the physical world and the mind becomes completely silent. And within these different layers of Samadhi, and even before we enter Samadhi, the witness can be experienced in different ways. So that witnessing quality can actually be present even if we're not in Samadhi. Even if pure awareness isn't the dominant aspect of our being, we can still be allowing objects to arise and pass away without any colouring process of the mind. So the witness can be present even if Samadhi is not present. Then when Samadhi comes, pure awareness is dominant. The witness could still be there, or it might not be. Okay? So we enter Samadhi, pure awareness is the dominant aspect, everything else goes to the background. Usually the witness will be there in that state. Usually we're not disturbed by the objects arising in consciousness. But we could be, we still could be. That mosquito comes, gets closer and closer. There still can be aversion arising. I wish that mosquito went away. Or we're sitting in Samadhi, everything's very peaceful, very blissful. And then we hear a beautiful bird singing. And then the thought arises, I wish that bird would stay for the whole of my meditation session. So that's grasping, clinging, attachment. Or something can arise and we can identify with it. So the witness isn't necessarily present even when we're in samadhi. There can still be the colouring process of the mind going on. But the witness can be present, and often is. Okay, this is one of the advantages of entering samadhi, is that it's much easier to witness things. It's much easier to distinguish between objects arising in consciousness and the awareness that we are observing those objects. And then in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the physical world has disappeared, the mind's come to complete silence, there's no colouring process happening at all. There can't be, because there are no objects of consciousness. Okay, so this is one of the things that we can observe if we're entering samadhi states. How strong is the witness? How strong is our ability to simply allow things to be without getting caught up in them? Okay, and the second question that was asked: if someone is permanently in samadhi, does that mean that they no longer identify as a separate self? Okay, so not necessarily. So remember, there's layers of samadhi, there's different kinds of samadhi. There's deeper samadhi states, lighter samadhi states where there's still identification going on with thoughts, emotions. So samadhi by itself doesn't necessarily say anything about self-realization. Someone could be entering very deep states of samadhi in their meditation every day and yet be strongly identified with a sense of separate self. And they could actually be even more identified, because the thought can arise, I'm such a great meditator, I enter Nirvikalpa Samadhi every day. So even advanced states of meditation can feed into the sense of separation if we're not careful. So samadhi in and of itself doesn't mean that someone no longer perceives themselves as being a separate self. Okay, so there's subtleties to this. So what normally happens is, to begin with, we're entering samadhi occasionally, coming out of samadhi, entering samadhi in our meditations, coming out of samadhi when we're not meditating. There's a loosening that happens, okay, a loosening, and it's a loosening of identification. Usually in the world we identify with things quite easily. This is my watch, this is my car, this is my body, this is my thought, this is my memory, this is my belief. Okay, we identify with things quite freely. Now when we're repeatedly entering samadhi, it weakens that process of identification. Okay, pure awareness comes to the foreground. Pure awareness becomes the dominant aspect of our being, and it changes our relationship with objects. It changes our relationship with objects in the world and with objects of the mind. Our relationship with thoughts, memories, emotions, and so on. And this loosening happens. We increasingly see ourselves as the observer, and everything arising in consciousness as the observed. So a shift in identification happens, and it happens very gradually, over a long period of time, and over repeated entry into samadhi on many different occasions. So we gradually start seeing ourselves as the observer, everything arising in consciousness is the observed. And we gradually start to know ourselves as the observer, as pure awareness, or as presence, as some people would say. Now, even that stage is still a stage of separation. We know ourselves to be pure awareness and everything else to be the observed, to be that which we are not. Then there's still a sense of separate self. There's who we are and who we are not. And through continued repeated entry into Samadhi, even that sense of separation dissolves. Even that sense that there is pure awareness separate from the objects that arise within it. And that's a very subtle process, and it's very difficult to describe how that happens. But to go beyond a sense of separate self, we have to move beyond identification with pure awareness. It has to become seeing ourselves as everything, everywhere, or unity, or kaivalya. So if we look at the relationship between samadhi and self-realization, you could say that samadhi is a tool which gradually leads to self-realization, and when self-realization happens, samadhi is there. Okay, so this is why you'll sometimes hear people say that samadhi is synonymous with enlightenment. Okay, it's not really that it's synonymous with enlightenment. It's actually something that happens many times on the path to enlightenment and is there permanently when self-realization happens. Okay, and the next question. Is it true that someone cannot simply enter samadhi at will? Okay, so this is sort of true. We can't just think, I'm going to enter samadhi and it then happens. But what we can do is create the conditions for samadhi to occur. Okay, we can't just snap our fingers and be in samadhi, but we can create the right conditions. And usually, to begin with, those right conditions are a peaceful mind, equanimity, a balanced mind, not bothered by things, not elated by things, but simply calm and balanced. And a still body. Okay, if we keep our body still, or relatively still, it doesn't have to be perfectly still, but if the body is relatively still, motionless, the mind is quiet, equanimity is present, everything is balanced and calm. That's the condition in which samadhi usually arises to begin with. Later on, samadhi can simply come any time, in any circumstances. You could be on a crowded train, samadhi happens. You could be walking through the streets, lots of things going on, samadhi happens. But to begin with, usually the body's still, the mind's calm, centered, balanced. Okay, and the next question was, if the higher stages of samadhi are related to the transcending of karma, how can this be possible, given that we are always creating new karma due to the actions we make in a physical body? Okay, so it's true that when we're in a physical body, we're always acting, and every action creates a reaction. That means that we're continuously creating karma. However, there's a difference between ending karma and transcending karma. And this is a crucial difference. Transcendence is a little bit like diving down in the ocean. Okay, imagine you're swimming on the surface of the ocean and the waves are splashing in your face. And then you dive down under the waves. They're no longer splashing in your face. You can still see the waves if you look up. They're still there, you haven't stopped them. If you dive down even deeper, the waves are seen in the distance, and they're not affecting you anymore. Those waves don't affect you. They could be huge. Yeah, they won't affect you at all. So transcending karma is like this. We don't stop acting. We never actually stop acting in the world. We're always performing actions every day. We don't stop creating new karma. But we're gradually coming to see ourselves as that which is beyond action and reaction. Yeah, action and reaction happen in the world. Action and reaction happen to the body. Action and reaction happens to the objects of the mind. So in Samadhi, we're coming to know ourselves as the seer. The objects are the seen. And the seer is never touched by karma, never affected by karma. Okay. So this is the process of transcending karma. Actions will still go on. They're still observed. But we are increasingly not touched by them. Increasingly not affected by them. And we'll start to know this gradually. We start to notice this gradually. What will tend to happen is that you'll experience something. You might experience something that you know you would have got upset by it a year ago or 2 years ago. But now it doesn't upset you. Yeah, it doesn't. You can see the same thing playing out, but you're somehow different. You're calm. You're centered. You're peaceful. You're undisturbed. Okay, so this is the process of transcending karma. Okay, and the next question was, in Samadhi we begin to realize that everything we see or are conscious of is simply a creation of the mind. Does this change how we relate to the world and to other people? Okay, so yes, it does. So this is true. Everything we see, everything we observe is a creation of the mind. It's a creation of the mind in the sense that it's coloured by the mind. Yeah, everything we see, as soon as we see it, we colour it. The process takes milliseconds. We give it a name and a form. And then, do we like it? Do we not like it? Is it ours? Is it not ours? Is it me? Is it mine? All these things happen in the blink of an eye, so fast that we can't see the process happening. But in Samadhi, when the mind is quiet and peaceful and calm, pure awareness is the dominant aspect of our being, we start seeing this process happening. We start seeing this colouring process of the mind, and we start to realize that everything is touched by the mind, everything is coloured by the mind. We normally never see things as they truly are. And then as this colouring process of the mind begins to subside and fall away, we start to see things as they actually are, in their formless state, in their true state, in their pure state, completely uncoloured. And the same thing goes for other people. We normally project onto other people. We normally perform the same processes that we do with objects on people that we meet. There's this process of separation happening. So as this colouring process of the mind falls away, it does change our relationship to the world, the things of the world. We start to see them as they truly are. And it changes our relationship to other people. We start to see other people as they truly are. We start to see other people as pure awareness, as living forms of the divine, and as not separate from who we truly are. We actually start to see other people as God, simply incarnate in human forms. I remember my teacher in India talking about this once, and she said, when you reach the stage where you start to see everyone as God, don't start bowing down to them. Okay? Don't start doing what's called pranams. Because she said the danger is if you start bowing down to everyone you meet, because you're seeing them as God incarnate in human form, it'll go to their head and boost their ego, and it'll set them back on the spiritual path. So we actually enter a stage where we start seeing everything as the divine, everyone as the divine, but we can't bow down to everyone we meet because it won't help them spiritually. So we have to kind of pretend that we don't see them as the divine, even whilst we do. So yes, seeing things as they truly are changes our relationship to the world and to other people. And there is an aspect of wonderment when we start to see things as they really are. It's incredible. It's the word wonderment is the best that I can think of. Okay, and we've got one more question that came up. How can we transition from samadhi being present sometimes to samadhi becoming a permanent state? Okay, so when we enter samadhi, what actually brings us out of samadhi is obstructions in the subtle nervous system. Okay, obstructions in the energy channels and the chakras. So if we enter samadhi and then come out of samadhi, we know that we've still got work to do in terms of purifying the subtle nervous system. And the things that purify the subtle nervous system are the practices of yoga. And it's actually all the practices of yoga. Asana practice purifies the subtle nervous system. Pranayama very strongly purifies the subtle nervous system. Meditation purifies the subtle nervous system. Mudras, bandhas, samyama, even inquiry practices have an effect of purifying the subtle nervous system. So if we want to transition from entering samadhi occasionally to samadhi becoming a permanent state of abiding, yoga is the answer. Practice every day, practice diligently.